The incident on April 24, 1964, was never just another strange light in the desert, and anyone who lived through it knew that calling it a UFO sighting was like calling a nuclear detonation a spark. Technically true, but catastrophically insufficient. What we encountered out there near Socorro was something far darker, something that carved a permanent crack through the foundation of everything I believed about duty, security, and the limits of the world I thought I understood. Back then I was 26, 8 years into my Air Force career, assigned as a security specialist at White Sands Missile Range, a sprawling stretch of desert where we tested weapons powerful enough to reshape continents. White Sands was a place built on secrecy, and over time you learned to stop asking why equipment glitched without reason, why radar techs swore they saw objects with impossible trajectories, why patrolmen would come back from their rounds pale and avoidant. Everyone had seen something once, lights with no source, shadows moving against the sky, machinery that died the moment a glowing object drifted overhead, but no one spoke about it unless they wanted psychological evaluations and reassignment to a desk. On April 24th, the heat was sharp enough to shimmer off the roads. As Corporal Parker and I made our rounds, following the endless perimeter trails and checking for signs of trespassers along the fence line. Parker was 3 years younger than me, steady and level-headed, the type you wanted beside you when the world turned sideways. By late afternoon, the sun was past its peak, but the desert still felt oven hot, the sky so clear it seemed hollow. Around 1730, we got a call that a Socorro police officer had witnessed what he described as an explosion or some kind of descending fireball on the western outskirts of town. Command wanted us to verify it wasn't connected to any test operations, official or otherwise. Parker joked that it was probably kids blowing up homemade fireworks or maybe a mythlat going up, but the description didn't sit right with me. A blue-orange flame coming down in a controlled path? That wasn't fireworks or some backwoods chemistry experiment. We reached Socorro in about 20 minutes, the town looking like a quiet grid of low buildings surrounded by desert that stretched forever. The officer, Reynolds, was waiting in his cruiser, his tan skin gone pale beneath the setting sun. When he stepped out, his voice trembled as he pointed toward a shallow arroyo beyond a ridge and told us the thing he saw was still there. He struggled for words, finally describing something white and egg-shaped, along with two small figures dressed in white suits. My stomach tightened. There was no version of kids with fireworks that involved figures. We followed him up the dirt track, our vehicles bouncing over ruts until we crested the ridge and saw the arroyo below. That was the moment the world I understood simply bent. About 150 yards ahead, an object stood upright on the desert floor, smooth, pale, seamless, towering maybe 15 feet high and curved like a giant shell. Its surface reflected the last daylight in a way that seemed almost self-generated, but it was the figures beside it that froze the breath in my throat. Two small beings, no more than 4 feet tall, moved with impossible fluidity, their limbs too slender, their heads oversized in a way no human anatomy book could justify. Through binoculars, I saw their suits weren't fabric, but some reflective material that clung without wrinkles or folds. Their heads were rounded, smooth, and featureless except for large, dark ovals that had to be eyes. And one of them turned, slowly, deliberately, until it was facing directly toward us. Even across that distance, even through glass, the sensation hit me like ice water running down my spine. It wasn't looking at me, it was looking into me. We needed to call it in. My voice stayed calm somehow, though my pulse hammered so hard it hurt. Parker reached for the radio, but before he could speak, the sound started. A low vibration trembled through my ribs first, then rose in pitch until it filled the air with a bone-deep hum that made speech impossible. The figures glided, literally glided, back toward the craft, covering the distance in a way that defied physical movement. The object brightened from within, pulsing blue, orange, and a white so intense it felt like it stripped the color from everything around it. The ground shuddered. Then the craft lifted, not gradually, not with thrust or acceleration, but simply shifted from resting on the ground to hovering 50 feet in the air in a single, impossible instant. Beneath it, 4 dark scorch marks radiated outward in a perfect pattern. "Get on the radio," I told Parker, though I couldn't tear my eyes from the hovering thing. He called it in, stumbling over his words, the dispatcher questioning whether we were experiencing heat exhaustion or hallucinations, but I barely heard them. The object drifted toward us, silent now, except for that low hum that vibrated in my teeth. Its light pulsed in a rhythm that felt alive, like breathing. "Back in the vehicle," I ordered, and we sprinted, slamming doors just as the object stopped, directly above us. Light washed over everything, blinding, shadowless, absolute, and the air thickened, resisting every breath as my skin prickled violently, like electricity crawling beneath it. Then something pushed into my mind, not thoughts, not language, just presence, alien, immense, and impossibly aware. The moment that presence hit me, everything I understood about fear changed. It wasn't panic or adrenaline or the instinct to run. It was a deep, invasive violation, like something vast and wordless was peeling apart the edges of my consciousness, examining pieces of my mind I never meant to show anyone. The air grew so thick it felt almost liquid, forcing itself into my lungs with every breath, and every hair on my body stood upright as if charged with static. Parker was screaming, his mouth wide, his face twisted, but the humming drowned everything out until even my own heartbeat felt muted beneath it. Officer Reynolds crumpled beside his cruiser, clutching his skull as though something inside it was trying to claw its way out. Time worked around us, moments stretching into long, drawn-out waves that refused to behave like normal seconds, then snapping forward so abruptly I felt nauseous. I was still gripping the steering wheel even though I didn't remember raising my hands, my knuckles white, my vision tunneling as that alien presence pressed harder, probing, testing, searching. It didn't feel human. It didn't feel anything like communication the way we understand it. It was more like assessment, clinical, detached, cold. And just when I thought my mind would tear under the strain, the pressure vanished all at once, an abrupt release that made me gasp as if breaking the surface of deep water. The blinding light dimmed, the hum faded, and the thick, syrupy air snapped back to normal. Before I could speak, before I could even unclench my hands from the wheel, the craft shot away. Not like a vehicle accelerating, more like it simply relocated instantly from one position to another, a streak of luminous white slicing across the sky toward the mountains with no sonic boom, no atmospheric disturbance, no signature of propulsion. In seconds, it was gone. Parker slumped against the seat beside me, trembling violently, sweat dripping down his temples as he tried to steady his breathing. Reynolds stared up at the sky, pupils blown wide, looking like a man who had seen something his mind couldn't begin to contain. "What the hell was that?" Parker whispered, voice hoarse, barely audible. I didn't answer because I didn't trust my voice not to crack. My watch said 1,750 hours, 5 minutes, all of that, the craft, the figures, the paralysis, the mental intrusion, had taken place in 5 minutes. It felt like an eternity. The radio crackled sharply, making us all jump. Dispatch was demanding a situational report in a clipped, irritated tone, unaware that nothing in the manual could describe what we'd just witnessed. Parker tried to respond, his voice shaking so badly he had to grip the handset with both hands just to keep it steady. The dispatcher asked if we were injured, if we were dehydrated, if we were sure we hadn't misidentified an aircraft. I grabbed the handset before Parker could stumble through another answer. "Send a response team," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "Bring cameras, instrumentation, radiation detectors, everything. The site needs to be secured immediately." There was a long silence, nothing but faint static hissing across the line. When the voice came back, it wasn't dispatch. It was a man with a clipped, authoritative tone I recognized instantly. "Sergeant Morrison, this is Colonel Bradford. Hold your position. Prevent any civilians from approaching. A specialized team is en route. Do not discuss what you witnessed. That is a direct order." "Acknowledged. Acknowledged, sir." I lowered the handset slowly, the weight of his words settling in my chest. Parker leaned forward, elbows on his knees, rubbing his face with both hands. "This is real, right? We didn't hallucinate that. We saw the same thing," I said. "All three of us." But even as I said it, the memory was already shifting in strange ways, details sliding around like loose sand. I couldn't remember whether the craft had hovered 10 feet above or 20. Couldn't recall the exact tint of the light when it pulsed orange. Couldn't even be sure whether the figures had 3 fingers or 4. It frightened me more than the encounter itself. The idea that the experience wasn't just shocking, but slippery, resisting clear recollection, as though my brain itself was rejecting the information. We walked back toward the landing site, guns drawn even though instinct told me firearms were meaningless in the face of whatever we had encountered. The evening sun cast long shadows across the arroyo, turning the scorch marks into dark, glassy wounds in the earth. 4 distinct impressions marked where the craft had rested, each one circular, each one melted into the sand as though subjected to unimaginable heat. I crouched at the nearest one, running my fingers across the fused surface. It was smooth like polished stone, but left an invisible, oily film on my skin that didn't feel like anything natural. Between the impressions, the ground looked warped, textured with a metallic sheen that shimmered faintly even in the fading light. Parker documented everything with rapid clicks of the service camera. Reynolds paced the perimeter, measuring distances and muttering numbers under his breath as if grounding himself with arithmetic was the only thing keeping him from unraveling. "Sergeant," Parker called out, voice tight, "you need to see this." He pointed to one of the indentations where a symbol had been burned or pressed into the fused soil. 3 shapes, an upward-pointing arrow, a horizontal line across the shaft, and a semicircle anchoring the base. Simple, geometric. Wrong. It wasn't random. It wasn't the result of heat. It was intentional, meaningful. And staring at it filled me with a cold dread I couldn't explain. "Photograph it," I said quietly. "Command will want every angle." Before he finished, engines echoed across the desert. 3 military vehicles pulled up on the ridge, and men in uniform fanned out, accompanied by several civilians carrying equipment cases. Their faces were grim, focused. They knew this wasn't fireworks. A captain approached us. "Sergeant Morrison," he said, "I'm Captain Wallace, Air Force Intelligence. You and Corporal Parker will come with me for debriefing. Officer Reynolds as well." "What about the landing site?" "It's being secured," he said sharply. "Your job now is to tell us exactly what happened." They separated us, questioning each of us for hours, repeating questions, circling back, probing for inconsistencies. They never once suggested we imagined it. That, more than anything, told me how serious this was. It was well after midnight when they finally released us with one last warning. Everything we'd witnessed was now classified. Discuss it, and we'd face court-martial. As I lay in my bunk staring at the ceiling, the presence I'd felt under that craft echoed faintly at the back of my skull, as if whatever had touched my mind hadn't fully left. And somewhere deep inside, I knew with an awful certainty the encounter wasn't over, not by a long shot. Sleep never found me that night. Every time I shut my eyes, that strange symbol burned into the desert floor, flickered behind my eyelids like an afterimage, burned into my mind. The upward arrow, the bar, the half circle, simple shapes that felt impossibly ancient, purposeful, and wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. It haunted me with a weight I didn't understand, as if it wasn't just a marking but a message I wasn't equipped to decode. At 0530, 2 MPs yanked me from my bunk without explanation and marched me across the base in silence, their expressions stiff and unreadable. I was ushered into the commander's office, where Parker already sat, pale and hollow-eyed, along with Officer Reynolds, who looked like he'd aged a decade overnight. His hands shook as he clutched a styrofoam cup so hard it looked on the verge of collapsing. Colonel Bradford sat rigid behind his desk, his normally calm features hardened into something grim. Beside him stood Captain Wallace and a civilian I didn't recognize. Sharp suit, government-issued briefcase, eyes that scanned the room like a man cataloging threats. "Gentlemen," Bradford said without ceremony, his voice clipped and icy, "what you witnessed yesterday is now classified at the highest level. You will not discuss it with anyone, not family, not friends. Not among yourselves unless explicitly ordered. Violations will result in immediate court-martial. Do you understand?" We nodded because what other choice did we have? Good. Because the situation has escalated. He gestured to the civilian. This is Mr. Harrison, Project Blue Book. The name hit me like a jab to the ribs. Most of us had heard whispers about it, a rumored investigative program buried so deep in the intelligence community that even officers with top-level clearance pretended it didn't exist. Harrison opened his briefcase and produced a series of photographs, sliding them across the desk. My stomach twisted. They were aerial shots of the landing site, taken only hours after we'd left, but the scene had changed. The 4 landing imprints remained, though now they looked deeper, sharper, as if the craft had pressed down harder the longer it stayed. But surrounding them was a new pattern, dozens of smaller prints radiating outward in concentric arcs, as though something had walked around the site repeatedly. But these weren't human footprints. Each print was a perfect oval, shallow, evenly spaced, almost mathematically precise. And where the symbol had been, the soil wasn't scorched anymore. It had turned completely black, not dusty black, but glossy and glass-like, as though the Earth itself had been chemically altered. Radiation levels are anomalous, Harrison said quietly. Not nuclear, not terrestrial, nothing any of our instruments are designed to detect. It's like the soil is emitting energy in a spectrum we can't categorize. We were standing right there, Parker whispered, horror creeping into his voice. We walked through that. You will be monitored, Bradford said with a tone that tried and failed to be reassuring. Daily medical exams, blood work, neurological assessments. So far, none of these show acute symptoms. So far. The unspoken warning chilled me. Harrison placed another photo on the table, a high-resolution close-up of the symbol. In daylight, it was worse, far worse. The lines weren't carved or burned, glowed faintly, a pale blue halo radiating from within the glassy black soil. Something about that glow made my skin crawl, like staring at a language not meant for human eyes. We need a full account, Harrison said. Every detail. Colors, sounds, movements, sensations, everything. For 3 hours, we told him everything we could recall, or thought we recalled. He wrote in a leather-bound journal, occasionally nodding or narrowing his eyes, never interrupting except to press for clarity. It was during Reynolds' description that something inside me shifted. He paused, brow furrowing. There was a moment, he said slowly, right before the craft rose. One of them looked at me, and I heard something. Not sound, not speech. Like pressure, like it was pushing something into my mind. I felt ice crawl up my spine. I remembered that, not clearly, but there had been something, a pressure that wasn't just physical. I felt it too, I admitted. Parker nodded. Same here. Harrison stopped writing. The room's energy tightened, as if everyone suddenly understood we'd crossed into territory beyond physics. Did you understand what it wanted? He asked. No one answered for several seconds. Not words, I said finally. Not comprehension. More like being examined, judged. The colonel exhaled slowly, then delivered the blow we all sensed coming. Effective immediately, you are confined to base. No communication with the outside world. No exceptions. Sir, my family, I started. They'll be told you've been reassigned to a classified operation, he said. That's all. We were taken to a restricted underground wing I'd never known existed, a maze of sterile halls humming with ventilation systems. For 2 days we underwent relentless tests, blood samples every 6 hours, X-rays, MRIs, cognitive exams, psychological evaluations so repetitive they bordered on interrogation. Each test left me more drained and uneasy. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, but the doctors danced around specifics, trading uneasy glances as they studied results clipped to metal boards. During my 3rd exam, one doctor finally cracked. Your white blood cell count is elevated, he said softly, brows pulling together, but not in any pattern associated with infection or radiation exposure. It's reacting to something unfamiliar, something foreign. His hesitation made my skin crawl. On the 3rd night, alarms ripped through the facility, piercing, urgent, the kind reserved for catastrophic failures or enemy attack. Red lights flashed across the hallway as soldiers sprinted past our quarters. Parker burst into my room, breathless. Something's happening at the silos, he said. Systems are failing, all of them. White Sands housed several underground missile installations, Minuteman ICBMs capable of wiping entire cities off the map. Their protocols were airtight, fail-safe, untouchable. But radio chatter spilling through the hallways told a different story. Systems weren't just glitching, they were collapsing, all at once. We were pulled into a briefing room as the base shook with activity. Colonel Bradford stood before us, his expression bleaker than I'd ever seen. At 0147 hours, he said, Echo 7 Silo reported a craft hovering overhead. Within minutes, all electronics in the facility went offline. He paused, letting the weight settle. Then Echo 4 reported the same. Then Echo 2. A cold wave of dread washed through me. Whatever we saw at Socorro had returned. And this time, it wasn't observing. It was doing something deliberate, something calculated, something far worse. We deployed before dawn, the sky still bruised with the last remnants of night, as our convoy sped across the desert toward Echo 7, every vehicle vibrating with a tension that felt ready to snap. We were moving fast, too fast for safety, but no one dared argue, not with half the base in a full-scale emergency lockdown and reports coming in that made our encounter near Socorro feel like an opening act. I sat in the back of the lead truck beside Parker, both of us clutching our rifles, though we knew deep down bullets meant nothing against whatever had shut down missile defenses capable of surviving nuclear war. Captain Wallace rode up front, barking orders into the radio that were met mostly with static as communications continued to collapse sector by sector. When we reached the silo perimeter, even the most cynical skeptics went silent. Hovering 200 feet above the reinforced steel hatch was an object larger than the one we had seen in the Arroyo. Twice the size at least, maybe 30 feet in diameter. The same pale, seamless, egg-like form, but with new protrusions extending from its underside like delicate metallic tendrils. Its surface pulsed with a soft white luminescence, every ripple and shift of color synchronized like a heartbeat. Beneath it, the air wavered violently, as though the craft distorted the very atmosphere it occupied. Our trucks rolled to a halt 100 yards out. No one wanted to get closer than that invisible threshold. Electromagnetic interference is off the charts, one technician shouted. This field is unlike anything we've recorded. Everything within a quarter mile is being overwritten. Wallace ignored the rising panic. Can we send a message? Any frequency at all? Sir, I whispered before the technician could respond. Communication is pointless. This thing didn't come to talk. Wallace didn't look at me, but his jaw tightened, a small acknowledgement that he feared I was right. Still, he ordered his team to attempt contact. Mathematical patterns, binary sequences, multilingual greetings, but the craft gave no sign it registered anything. It didn't move, didn't react, didn't adjust its position. It simply hovered with implacable patience. Then, it descended, slowly, gracefully, impossibly controlled. The moment it came directly over the silo's blast door, the 20-ton hatch, which required explosive charges to open in emergencies, swung upward as effortlessly as a cupboard door. It didn't break, didn't twist, didn't strain. It simply obeyed, as if the lock mechanisms themselves had decided resistance was meaningless. Fall back, Wallace shouted, but his voice carried no weight. No one moved, no one could. We were watching something unfolding that had no reference point in our understanding of physics, engineering, or reality. A beam of light extended downward from the belly of the craft, the same solid, almost physical column we'd seen in Socorro, this time wider, brighter, shaped like a perfect cylinder, and then they appeared. The small figures descended inside the beam, gliding down as though gravity didn't apply to them. Their silhouettes were unmistakable, identical to the ones near Socorro. Small, slender, oversized heads, moving with that eerie, liquid grace. Parker's voice cracked. They're going into the silo. Someone behind us panicked and shouted, "Open fire!" The order rippled through the soldiers like electricity, training overriding reason. 30 rifles erupted, tracer rounds streaking through the pre-dawn gloom. I fired too, reflexive, automatic, but in my heart I knew it was useless. The bullets never reached the craft. Every round froze mid-air, the moment it crossed into that shimmering distortion beneath the object, suspended like insects trapped in amber. Then they glowed red from heat and fell straight down, harmless, as though gravity had reasserted itself only after the craft decided our aggression wasn't worth acknowledging. The figures continued descending, unimpeded, unbothered, utterly disinterested in our attempts of violence. A scream erupted through the radios, the security team stationed inside the silo. Their voices were distorted by static, their words shredded by interference, but the terror was unmistakable. They're inside, touching the warhead. Oh God, stop them. The transmission cut off, replaced by a deep pressure that made my ears ache. The beam retracted. The figures rose back up, ascending with that horrifying smoothness. And one of them carried something. A cylindrical piece of metal, glowing faintly from within, 2 feet long, unmistakable, part of the missile's core, part of our nuclear weapon. They had extracted it as easily as someone removing batteries from a flashlight. The craft's light pulsed violently, then it surged upward, accelerating in a way no human-built vehicle could hope to match. Within seconds, it was a star. Within 10, it was gone. Silence crushed the desert. We rushed the silo, descending ladders into the missile chamber, where the stench of ozone and burnt electronics lingered in the air. 4 men sat against the wall, wide-eyed, shaking, their minds clearly broken. The missile itself towered in the center of the room, but its pacing was open. Not forced, not cut. Opened, as if by invisible hands. Inside, where the plutonium core should have been, there was only an empty cavity. They disarmed it, a technician whispered, voice hollow. They removed the core. Wallace stared up at the gaping missile, horror curdling his features. How? Those seals require specialized tools, hours of work. They did it in under 3 minutes, I said quietly. And the worst part wasn't what they'd done. It was the realization settling cold in my chest. They hadn't just disabled one missile. They were doing this systematically. Silos across White Sands were going dark. Our nuclear arsenal was being dismantled, piece by piece, without a single human casualty. Whatever these entities were, whatever they wanted, they were sending a message, and every second that passed made it clearer. We weren't just outmatched. We were irrelevant. By the time the sun climbed over the desert horizon, the damage was undeniable. 6 of White Sands' 8 nuclear missile installations had been stripped of their plutonium cores with surgical precision. Each extraction performed in under minutes by entities that moved like shadows and left nothing but inert shells behind. Our base had transformed into a hive of frenzied motion, jets scrambling overhead, radar stations spinning at full sweep, emergency teams flooding every sector, yet no one could point to an enemy we could fight or communicate with. We returned to the underground facility, escorted by MPs who looked just as terrified as we felt. No one wanted to admit it, but every soldier on that base understood the truth. Our deadliest weapons, our most guarded secrets, our most sacred deterrents had been rendered meaningless overnight. Government vehicles arrived throughout the morning, carrying officials in dark suits who spoke in clipped whispers and carried briefcases stamped with classification codes most of us had never seen. They separated us again, question after question, round after round, interrogations that felt less like a search for truth and more like a desperate attempt to mold the narrative into something manageable. But the questions changed this time. Did the entities act aggressively? Did you sense hostility? Do you believe they intend to attack? I couldn't give them the answers they wanted. The beings had moved with purpose, not malice. They dismantled our nuclear arsenal as if disarming a dangerous child, not destroying a rival. They took the cores, but left the missiles intact. They disabled our systems, but didn't harm our people. It felt less like an act of war and more like an intervention. Yet none of us could escape the sense that something else, something bigger, was unfolding behind it. That night, lying in the marrow bunk of the underground barracks, I felt it again, the faint, alien pressure deep in my mind, subtle but unmistakable, like a distant voice, trying to reach me without sound or language. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't painful. It felt like warning. A dread churned in my chest as if some part of me already knew the truth. These entities weren't our enemies. They were reacting to something we couldn't see, something coming. Over the next week, The interrogations continued relentlessly. 7 days of retelling the same events, describing every detail until the story felt like a worn-out recording. But beneath the surface, the officials weren't looking for clarity, they were preparing containment. On day 8, they summoned me to a conference room deeper underground than anywhere I'd been allowed before. The walls were lead-lined, the air heavy, the silence suffocating. Captain Wallace was there, Mr. Harrison from Blue Book, a 2-star general whose medals glittered under the fluorescent whites. A woman in civilian clothes who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Bradford. And a silent man in a black suit who never stated his name. The general began with a tone that left no room for uncertainty. Sergeant Morrison, what we are about to discuss is classified under the highest protocols. Disclosure to anyone without clearance will result in immediate imprisonment. Do you understand? I nodded, pulse hammering. Dr. Bradford opened a thick folder, spreading photographs across the table. Images of missile bases around the world, Malmstrom, Warren, Kirtland. Each photo showed the same surgical tampering we'd witnessed, cores missing, silos dead. These incidents didn't begin at White Sands, she said. We've tracked them for decades. She paused. Roswell was not a weather balloon. Hearing it spoken aloud felt like having the floor shift beneath me. Harrison added coldly, over 300 encounters involving unidentified craft have occurred since 1947. A pattern emerges every time nuclear capabilities rise. He tapped a photo. Every time humanity escalates its weapon development, these beings intervene. Parker and Reynolds were brought in then, both pale, exhausted. We were shown medical files, our medical files, pages detailing elevated white blood cell counts, neurological spikes, unusual brainwave patterns, not consistent with radiation injury, not consistent with trauma, something else. Your bodies are reacting to contact with the craft's energy field, Dr. Bradford said. Most symptoms are temporary, but others may be permanent. I felt a cold rush as she continued. Some witnesses report increased intuition, heightened pattern recognition, occasional precognitive episodes. My breath caught. The dreams, the flashes, the dread. Are we changing? I asked. Is the exposure altering us? Dr. Bradford exchanged a look with the unnamed man before answering. We believe the changes are neurological, possibly genetic. The room went still. Genetic, I breathed. You mean it might be worse than the previous desert. I hope that we can learn. We have no question. We have no more. I feel we can. What? She didn't have to say it. The implication was unmistakable. The man in the black suit leaned forward. Sergeant, these entities are not attacking us. They're preventing us from crossing a threshold we do not understand. Something about nuclear detonations threatens more than our planet, perhaps more than our dimension. He paused, letting the weight settle. They aren't our enemy. They may be protecting us from something else. I felt that same deep certainty tighten in my chest, the same sensation I'd felt under the craft. They were warning us, preparing us, and suddenly the disarming of our missiles felt less like an intrusion and more like a desperate act of prevention.
Oh, I think this...
But the general closed the folder and shattered the moment with his final verdict. None of this leaves this room. The public will never know. The truth would topple governments. And in that instant, I realized the real danger wasn't the entities above us. It was the humans sitting in that room, terrified, desperate, and willing to bury the truth at any cost. The room fell into a suffocating silence after the general's declaration. The kind of silence that makes you suddenly aware of your own heartbeat, your own breathing, the weight of every secret pressing down like concrete. I sat there, staring at the stack of documents, photos of mutilated missiles, glowing symbols, medical charts that didn't look like they belonged to human biology. And for the first time since April 24th, the true scope of what we were dealing with finally took shape. These beings hadn't simply walked into our world, they'd stepped into the center of humanity's most dangerous creations and dismantled them as if swatting flies. And the worst part wasn't the intrusion itself, it was realizing that beyond all our military might, beyond our nationalism and our doctrine of deterrence, we had absolutely no agency in this. We bury this, the general repeated, voice sharp and cold. Every witness report will be classified. Every medical irregularity will be attributed to routine stress or service exposure. The public will not know. The world is not prepared for the truth. Parker slammed his fist on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. So we pretend we're safe? We pretend they can't just walk into every nuclear site on Earth and take whatever they want? The man in the black suit stared at him without blinking. Safety, he said calmly, is an illusion. Stability is not. The words landed heavily, and I felt something inside me tighten. Anger, confusion, fear, all twisted into a knot. People deserve to know what we saw, I said. What's happening isn't a threat from another country. It's something beyond us. Dr. Bradford leaned forward, tapping a finger on the medical folder bearing my name. Sergeant, you're already forgetting details, aren't you? The question stunned me into silence. Because she was right. The exact movement of the entities, the exact shade of that impossible light, the sequence of events, it was all slipping, eroding as if someone were quietly erasing pieces of my memory one grain at a time. It's part of the exposure, she said. The human brain rejects what it cannot process. Within a year, the details will blur. Within 10, you'll question whether parts of it happened at all. A defense mechanism, Harrison added. Evolutionary self-preservation. The realization felt like a second intrusion, almost as terrifying as the encounter itself. Not only were we powerless against the entities, we were losing the ability to even remember them clearly. And the radiation symptoms? I asked. The white blood cell spikes. We'll monitor you, Dr. Bradford said gently, for the rest of your lives. Annual exams under coded protocols. If long-term effects emerge, we'll know. I wanted to ask, and if something worse grows inside us, but the words wouldn't come. The man in the suit folded his hands. Sergeant, listen carefully. Whether these beings come from another planet, another dimension, or another layer of reality entirely doesn't matter. What matters is what they stopped. He paused, scanning each of our faces. Nuclear detonations do more than destroy physical matter. They rupture space-time. The energy propagates in ways our physics doesn't yet measure. The entities may exist across dimensions simultaneously. Our weapons may be harming them. A chill rippled through the room, not because of what he said, but because of the quiet certainty with which he said it. Or, Harrison said, voice low, they know something we don't. Maybe nuclear war wouldn't just annihilate us. What? He looked at me, eyes dark and haunted. Maybe it would unravel something larger. The implications settled like toxic dust. What if our greatest weapons weren't just dangerous, they were cosmically reckless? What if humanity was a toddler playing with matches beside a vat of gasoline it couldn't see? So what now? I asked. Now? The general exhaled, already rising from his chair. Now we continue. We repair what they dismantled. We rebuild. We maintain global stability. And we do it without ever acknowledging that we were completely overpowered. He paused at the doorway. And if they come back, which they will, we follow protocol. Protocol. As if protocol meant anything to a force that shut down nuclear missiles from the sky. We were dismissed, escorted back through the labyrinth of reinforced corridors. 3 days later, we were released from isolation, told to return to duty as if the world hadn't nearly shifted beneath our feet. Life on base resumed its rigid order, but underneath the routine ran a current of silent dread. The official Project Blue Book report on the Socorro incident was filed quietly on May 8, 1964. I read it years later, unidentified, possible weather anomaly, possible misidentification, no evidence of extraterrestrial technology. Lies so blatant, they barely qualified as explanations. Officer Reynolds went back to his hometown a changed man. In interviews decades later, he still insisted on the truth, but most people dismissed him as delusional. Parker didn't fare much better. Anxiety, depression, nightmares. He spiraled until the Air Force discharged him in '66. I stayed longer, but I paid a price. The headaches began slowly, sharp, stabbing pains behind my eyes that no doctor could explain. Then the memory issues deepened, faces blurred, conversations slipped away. I'd find myself staring at a wall, knowing minutes had passed but having no idea what I'd been thinking. Yet they kept me in service. I was too valuable, too dangerous to let go. In 1976, I was summoned underground again. A new scientist, Dr. Hayes, showed me my updated files. Your neural activity is elevating, he said. heightened pattern recognition, intuition spikes, and the dreams. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He already knew. Exposure to the craft appears to have altered your consciousness, he said. You're not the only one. I felt the weight of the truth settle like a stone in my chest. The entities hadn't just disarmed our weapons. They'd left something behind, inside us. And whatever that change was, it wasn't temporary. It wasn't accidental, and it wasn't done. The implications of what Dr. Hayes told me that day settled over my life like a second shadow, one that never left, no matter how many years passed or how deeply the government tried to bury the truth. He spoke of neurological alterations, of long-term changes in cognition, in intuition, in perception. But what stuck with me most was the quiet line he delivered before ending the briefing. The effects appear to be permanent and possibly hereditary. That sentence lodged in my mind like shrapnel. I thought of my daughter, born in 1965, brilliant, perceptive, able to sense things before they happened, a child whose teachers described her as uncannily intuitive. Was that just genetics and the influence of two sharp-minded parents, or had my exposure to that craft's energy left an imprint in my blood, one I had unknowingly passed to her? The government never said it aloud, but the medical tests they ran on her over the years, disguised as routine screenings, told me they suspected the same. When I retired in 1978, the Air Force sent me off with medals, handshakes, and ceremony, but beneath the pomp was a quiet effort to keep me within reach. They never stopped monitoring me. Annual tests continued, and the same silent men in unmarked cars occasionally visited my home to update records. Though they never asked about the symptoms they already knew I had, the headaches, the memory lapses, the unnatural flashes of intuition that felt less like guesses and more like intrusions of something external. But through all of it, the memory of Socorro survived, fading around the edges, yes, like the doctors had predicted, but the core remained sharp as a blade, that craft hovering above us like a pale, seamless god. Those small figures gliding across the desert, the presence burrowing into my mind with silent judgment, and the symbol glowing faintly in the broken earth. Even decades later, late at night when the world was quiet, I would still feel that subtle pressure, so faint it almost felt imagined, like a ripple across the surface of a pond long after the stone had been thrown. And sometimes, in those moments, it felt like something was listening. When the Cold War ended in 1991 and the Soviet Union crumbled, the political world declared victory, insisting humanity had avoided annihilation. People celebrated. Politicians boasted, but I knew better. I'd spent nearly 30 years watching how the entities reacted to our weapons. Their disarming wasn't random, it wasn't selective. Between 1964 and 1967 alone, there were over 60 documented encounters, none of which were ever revealed to the public, where unidentified craft hovered over nuclear silos worldwide: Russia, China, Britain, France. Every nation with nuclear capabilities was affected. All of them experienced system failures. All of them lost control of their warheads temporarily. All of them watched their most powerful deterrents go dark. Our governments interpreted it as a threat. I saw it as a warning, maybe even protection. Because these beings didn't just neutralize our weapons, they prevented something catastrophic, something beyond politics or ideology. They acted like custodians, like beings trying to keep a reckless species from burning down not just its own world, but something larger, something connected. And the older I got, the more I felt that truth settle into my bones like a quiet, persistent echo. Project Blue Book shut down in 1969, and the final report dismissed everything we saw as misidentification or misinterpretation. A lie. A comfortable one, but a lie nonetheless. I watched men who devoted their lives to the military break under the weight of that silence. Reynolds died in 1993, still insisting on the truth. People called him delusional. Parker faded even earlier. And now, as I sit here at 73, with a diagnosis hanging over my head, cancer, likely tied to the radiation exposure at Socorro, though the doctors pretend otherwise, I know my time is running out. The memory loss has gotten worse. The headaches sharper. Some nights I wake up with dried blood beneath my nose and metallic ringing in my ears. Echoes of a frequency I can't name. Maybe the contact scarred me physically. Maybe it rewired me. Maybe it did both. But before I go, I need to write this. I need the truth on paper, even if no one ever sees it. Because I believe something most people would laugh at. The entities didn't just take our plutonium cores. They left something behind. Not a device, not an object, something intangible. A marker, a failsafe, a safeguard woven into the fabric of the places they touched, and maybe into the people they judged as well. I believe that if humanity ever approaches the brink again, if we ever build something more destructive than nuclear fire, something that tears at space-time even deeper, they'll come back. And next time, they might not be gentle. Whether they are guardians, watchers, or merely travelers protecting their own reality, I don't know. But they are still out there, watching, waiting. And if we ever cross that invisible line again, the line we can't see, the line we weren't meant to cross, they will intervene. They've done it before, they will do it again. That is the truth of what happened at Socorro, New Mexico, on April 24th, 1964. Believe it or don't, accept it or dismiss it. But know this, while you read these words, something far above you may be reading humanity's next move. If you made it this far, you already know the truth runs deeper than any classified file, deeper than any official report. What happened at Socorro wasn't a story, it was a warning, a message humanity still hasn't understood. And if you want more declassified encounters, more buried testimonies, more shadows pulled into the light, then stick with me. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. This is Captain Rebel, signing off until the next file is opened.